we're still here for another exciting recap of more best of 3D politics.
And dressed just like last week and the week before.
That was a plan. It's called Intelligent Design. I'm Tom E. McKay. I got David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. We'll check you out in 2020. Boom. Just tuning in, excuse me, David, if you're just tuning in, 3D Politics Live right here on Facebook. I'm Tom McKay, your host, with all three of the most important Davids that matter. David D'Ambroso, David Oldham, and David Van. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, going off of what David said, not one legislator has worked to make marijuana constitutional. In other words, to reconstitutionalize, get back to a constitutional mindset and respect our rights. That our liberty cannot be deprived until we have done something to deserve it individually and gone through full due process.
They don't want to fix the problem. They're looking at a fatted cow and they're going to cut it open. That's all.
And the point is,
fix anything.
The point is that every single and I should say, not every legislator, because there have been some who did not get their bills heard, who were trying to make a dent.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So there have been some, but the people who could get things through did nothing. Okay. And they deserve the shame. And literally, no, the criminal shame that is due them because they are not upholding their oath of office. Yeah. We should see bills that completely repeal prohibition of marijuana, and we haven't yet, and that is a criminal oversight of every single legislator.
Well, yeah, I want to say the senators do not have a limit on the bills they can write. Typically, the House members, rank and file, each are allowed 8. I'm saying not a single one even wrote a bill, so it's not even a matter of it wasn't heard. They did not even write a bill.
Really?
Yes,
I saw a couple that were trying to.
A total of 31 bills that involved marijuana this year, and I read every one.
Okay. Okay. Well. Yeah. Then I stand corrected.
Some kind of cannabis nut over here.
I expect to see at least one this year.
Oh yeah.
At least introduced. At least introduced.
I mean, wouldn't the prohibition and repeal of alcohol prohibition be the model for this?
Yeah.
I mean,
extremely successful.
Well, it should be. There are lessons that they did wrong, even with those that prolonged problems, and we need to eliminate even those. But yes, those should be
correction of prohibition with alcohol. We prohibited and we corrected, and we've got a similar problem with marijuana. It's been prohibited. And
let me clarify that. Now, we all have learned the federal story of the federal prohibition and how it's repealed, but in Oklahoma we have a unique deal. Oklahoma kept it as a state prohibition for another 25 years, and then for the next 30 years. It was only in one of the licensed liquor stores, only in closed containers, very highly taxed, and it was very controlled.
Yes.
And then it wasn't until the mid-'80s that we got what we call liquor by the drink, where you could buy a glass of wine at a restaurant or whatever, or the taverns and that. Before that, they had to be closed, membership
and you'll notice 9/11 happened after that.
Okay.
There it is, right there.
So let me wrap this up. And then, even with that, they could not get that open liquor open by the drink passed unless they passed a county question on it so that each county could decide. And it's only recently, the last couple of counties have repealed prohibition. So yeah, Oklahoma really came dragging their feet for about 80 years.
And let's understand that all of those state prohibitions were unconstitutional. Every last one of them. Just because the state has more power than the feds does not mean that they can violate our rights.
Individual rights.
Our individual rights. Yeah. Our individual rights trump their prohibition.
They tend to disagree when they're kicking down your door, though.
Well, of course. That's the point
of
the show.
That's my only concern with that. I have one minor concern.
You wouldn't say that to his face.
That is the point of the show, is to expose what they're really doing. Or at least my part on the show. I see it as to expose all this stuff so people can start.
But David, I like it when they do it for things that I want them to enforce. I like it whenever I get to mandate what they do or don't do.
And that has got to change because that is no less criminal than other.
No, it's not criminal if everyone agrees, David.
So You're saying omnipotence is not a godly virtue.
Here we go again.
Not when it is used by people who are not authorized.
What are you even talking about, guys? This is way over my head.
I know God, and His name is not D'Ambrosio. All right.
Now, we're going to move on to reparations in general. You know, sometime back I asked you guys just a general question about is fighting some sort of deviant behavior. And now we're going to talk a little bit in general about reparations.
Well, we talked a couple weeks ago about reparations, Elizabeth Warren's, her Gay Reparations Act.
Right.
And I've had an interesting discussion over the past several days with, well, I'll say it, racists who are calling for reparations and think that everyone else owes them money for things that have happened in the past or are happening now, whether it happens to them personally or not.
And presumes we can calculate that number accurately.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it just,
I'll be asking for that.
and you know, that comes down to, I mean, we've just about discussed the entirety of the issue, but it did lead me to, the discussion led me to thinking, well, okay, we've got the Pahuska thing and the Fed saying that they have the right, that the owners of the property and the people who have been wrongly treated, wrongly arrested and so forth, have the right to sue.
Yeah.
Well, who actually should they be suing? Should they be suing the city?
Let me catch up. You're talking about the owners of the property, the truck,
The truck and the hemp.
And now they're going to sue somebody because they were infringed on their trip, right?
Correct.
And now who should
Well,
they sue?
and their entire load was destroyed. So they are out all the money that they spent for the load. So they are actually owed.
It was about a $500,000 payload.
So they are actually owed
Which has a street
$500,000.
value of $14 trillion.
But they are actually owed not only that, their truck, which I don't think they've gotten back yet.
No, the last time.
They're
both
all
vehicles.
of the people are owed not only you know their wages for their lost wages and things like that from the city, but also pain and suffering and this and that and the other thing. And there needs to be a punishment ascribed.
Yeah.
But the question is, to whom should they be suing?
Yeah.
Not to whom, but who should they be
Who
suing
is
again?
responsible for the damages?
Exactly. And how are they going to collect if these people don't have it?
We know how that's going to
But the thing is, reparations are very much along the same lines. And the question is, how far does it go? How far away from the criminals themselves do you drag people into this?
The fast answer is how far equals time. And so why isn't it a quick answer of statute of limitations?
Well, no. What I'm saying is, how far away from the actual criminals are you going to be basically encumbering other people? So in other words, if you are a resident of Pahuska and they sue Pahuska and Pahuska's out money now, so they tax you, who had absolutely nothing to do with it. How is that right? To be taxing you?
That's more justifiable as a member of the city that hired your people and elected your officials, and they were your guys.
Okay,
so,
right.
You know,
And I understand that.
My question,
but what if you did? What if you voted against them because you knew this was very possible?
Before we get deeper into a different subject, you said further away, and I'm talking about time. You were talking about degrees of personality. A person's responsible for their actions. And you get so many people away.
Okay.
But I'm asking about time specifically.
Sure.
Why isn't reparations a moot point because of statute of limitations?
Exactly. Well, actually, the entirety of reparations is because there is nothing that you can take to court. There is nothing that can be done in court for reparations because although they happen, there's not there aren't the individual acts, because individual acts have to be tried against individuals.
Are you talking about slavery now or what?
Well, slavery, but these people went into not only slavery, but they're owed money for missed opportunities for being black.
Well, let's separate that
Missed
out.
opportunity.
Let's separate that out from the
What was
hemp
her name?
truckers, okay? Because the hemp truckers, you got an actual person.
You got an actual crime.
The actual crime. Here's my thing. The city of Pawhuska authorized that law enforcement agency.
Right.
Okay? They are agents of the city government.
Right.
This is where it's important who you vote for. Because
Right.
when you give them the power to speak and make decisions on your behalf and collectively the whole city, you're on the hook for what they do. That is why there is a recall petition going on right now, before they cost the city any more money.
Van, you're making an excellent point, because most people, and I have been included that before I got interested in politics, most people who live in Oklahoma think there are two cities, Tulsa and Oklahoma City. And they don't think that whoever gets elected in Pawhuska really matters, because it's not Tulsa and it's not Oklahoma City.
Right.
However, you can see that Pawhuska can have federal implications.
Right. Now, in that case,
I mean, it's huge.
because Mike Fisher, the DA, is an agent of the state district courts, an officer of the courts. Now the entire state of Oklahoma is on the hook for his actions. And we don't have enough of a means of reining in our DAs.
Right.
And it desperately needs to be done, not just in Pawhuska, not just Osage County, but in many of the counties of Oklahoma.
Well, and this goes to all government officials, all, not just the DAs, but judges, legislators, governor,
cops,
cops, the entirety, because quite frankly, very little of what they do is actually lawful.
Yeah.
Very little of what they do.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Does it matter what somebody else's state representative does? Yeah, because he's an officer of our state government, just like somebody else's DA. I'm on the hook for what Mike Fisher does, even though I don't get to vote for him.
Right.
You know, so this is important to the whole state. This is why AG Mike Hunter, get on this thing, rein it in, bring some sense to this.
Where's the bell? Where's the bell?
Well, actually, if Hunter doesn't, how is he keeping his oath when it says that he must do his job to the best of his ability, and he can be made aware of it? In fact, we can tag him as soon as we get done with this, and he will then not be able to claim ignorance, and therefore, if he doesn't go in and do something about it, that's all on him.
You know what?
He proves himself to be a perjurer.
And I'm going to finish up with this. A good example, contrast. You go over to the district attorney over east of here, Jack Thorpe, at Sequoia County. He had the same thing happen. They had a highway stop of a trucker. Sure enough, he's hauling hemp. Jack tells the local law enforcement, get some samples, send it to the DEA so they know what's being shipped through Oklahoma.
Right.
If they decide to do something, fine. They sent the trucker on his way to Colorado. That's the kind of district attorney that can handle this case. AG Mike Hunter, you can move this one over to that district court, let somebody competent like Jack Thorpe handle it, and we go on our way.
Right. There's more and more backbone growing in the country. I can see it with Trump and Stitt, these people coming into office.
Yeah.
Right now, Brosa would say, well, you know, David, they can't do that because there's a law against it. All right, we're going to wrap this up with the crop of the drop. You know, everybody else has their top 10, the best of the best, and, you know, the cream rises to the top. But what happens to the rest? It drops to the bottom, and we've got the best of that. The crop of the drop, the absolute bottom 5 of 100. And tonight's crop of the drop is slogan ideas for the new Oklahoma car tag.
Yes.
Now, what is this thing that they're doing? Where they put out a new branding?
Well, yes. Matt Pinnell, Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell, is trying to rebrand the state and have consistent branding across all branches of government and all of our material and so forth.
So have they decided on the name yet? Is it finished?
No, what you're talking about for the car tags and that
Yes.
sort of thing. No, it's a branding in general. The car tags was
the slogan for the car tag. I think they
what he called it. Well, I don't know about that, but what he called it today was the clickbait. He's working on branding altogether. So it's probably like the state. Like a state brand motto kind of a
this
thing.
Is specifically for car tags.
Okay, let's use an example. In Arkansas, I remember back in the 80s, it was land of opportunity. And I remember Debbie and I just got married. It was New Year's Day, had the day off. We drove over there and got to the state line, and it says Arkansas, land of opportunity. I said, let's get out and take a picture, right?
Yeah.
There was a shack behind my wife, but I took a picture. Land of opportunity, there's a shack.
Shack of
I
opportunity.
was just in Siloam Springs. This is not the old highway. But anyway, then what Clinton finally got done over there in Arkansas was let's change it to the natural state.
Right.
It's on their license plates. It's on everything. That's what Matt's talking about.
Right.
All right. Now, if I heard the news correctly, I believe they've already picked the winner. And I believe the winner, and I'm really not joking, if I heard this correctly, the winner slogan, I'll tell you at the end. By the crop of the drop.
These didn't quite make it.
These are the worst of the worst. I'm going to tell you what the winner was. Number 95, Oklahoma is still there. Number 97, Oklahoma, home of Arkansas's river. Number 98, Oklahoma, better than mediocre. Number 99, Oklahoma, racism is not okay. And number 100, the worst of the worst, the absolute crop of the drop, absolute bottom 5 of 100. Number 100, Oklahoma, home of the 1921 race riot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that's what we're going to be looking at in 2021. That's all they're going to be talking about.
Oh, boy.
But I believe the winner actually happened, and the name that they picked, the slogan was, Oklahoma is better than okay.
Better than okay.
Really?
I actually think racism is not okay is a better slogan than that.
I don't know.
Hey, that's our show tonight. 3D Politics, best wishes to the D'Ambroso family with their addition. We hope to see you back next week. I'm Tom McKay, your host, with David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso in waiting. We'll see you next week for more 3D Politics. Stick around and find out.
All right.
So we're going to finalize our show tonight. We appreciate everybody for being here. We missed D'Ambroso, but I've still got David Van and David Oldham with Sooner Politics, Constitutional Grounds, and I'm Tom McKay, your incredibly relevant host. We're going to finish it off with this other portion of the show from Muskogee, right?
We had a great event happen in Muskogee, and just a little background. I actually am certified to train law enforcement on mental health intervention stuff.
Okay.
So I've had some experience. In fact, I actually did training down at the Muskogee Police Department a little while back.
Nice.
And yes, sheriff's departments in different counties were there and everything. So I kind of have a sense of how these trainings go. And law enforcement officers, to keep their CLEAT certification individually, they have to have ongoing training.
Right.
And a new dispensary, marijuana dispensary, that's opening up this week over there, decided to do something in partnership with the Muskogee Police Department and then the Muskogee County Sheriff's Department. They said, hey, let's set up a road course so we can train your officers to better understand what makes somebody impaired when consuming medical marijuana. And so they did this. They went out to the Muskogee Regional Airport, set up the cones, had plenty of space there, and they decided to test 3 classes of people. Those who were texting while driving to certain content, and then those who were consuming liquor, and then those who were consuming marijuana. And so they had some volunteers in each of these. Hey, you want to come get drunk? Or hey, you want to come get stoned? Hey, you want to come and see how good at texting you are? And, there's two different outcomes that were really intriguing here. In fact, I talked to some of the people. They're probably going to take this show on the road and go do a number.
What do they do? How do they make it work?
Okay, so there was a set.
Have you ever seen WKRP in Cincinnati?
That was a good one.
Yeah, so oh yeah,
Yeah.
it gets faster on the
Hitting the button, right. Yeah, your
Not
reaction
working.
instincts. Well, anyway, the interesting thing was the biggest failure were those who were texting, driving. It was worse than liquor.
So they're getting cops to text and drive?
I don't know who was in that control group, but they had a certain amount of commands.
Plausible deniability.
Yeah, but anyway.
So what if you're texting your drug dealer while you're drinking and driving? I mean,
Well, a lot of drug dealers don't use. So.
So there was
trying to run the books.
well,
Sorry.
a lot of the people that took all 3 doses of marijuana aced the test, and it shocked a lot of the cops that the only thing they saw that was consistent was the marijuana consumers started driving slower the more stoned they got. Now, I could have told you that. You know? But anyway, the other interesting thing was when the law enforcement officers went into this tent to where they were trained by the experts on the medical marijuana so that they would know how much is being consumed, what it tested out as far as potency on THC.
Right.
That's the bad boy stuff that makes you
so
wacky.
they can experience the effect
Right.
and know what the dosage was.
And they get a cause and effect here. Okay, this much causes this much, and you
Right.
know it's all in a controlled environment. And so,
Like your parents
don't know already.
and so some friends of mine who were there. In fact, one guy who really made this happen, Nathan Reese. Owns a dispensary, Sweet Leaf, up in Dewey and Bartlesville, 2 locations. He is a former police chief who now owns a dispensary. Yeah, he went to the dark side. So anyway,
The green side.
Well, he has some real significant health issues. There is private business, but so that made him a believer in what cannabis can do. And he's, so anyway, he said, bunch of the people that showed up there to do the marijuana portion, they were all licensed patients, legal to consume.
Right.
They're all in the tent having a good time, chatting.
Legal.
And,
They were legal.
Well, yeah, and they were like holding off on.
That piece of paper is special.
So anyway, and then the police officers come in, and it just killed the tone.
Oh yeah.
Because all of a sudden it was like, the cops.
Oh, yeah.
So because if you've been a patient before it was legal to be a patient, you had this apprehension.
Well, and cops famously have attitudes about it.
Oh, they do.
That's the thing.
They
They have a visceral hatred of the demon plant and all of that,
Yeah.
and those who might consume it.
there is a
And it's
stigma.
taught.
Yeah.
It's
And-
taught. It's
yeah.
trained this way.
And so the first cop comes in, he says, well, I guess I better learn about this cannabis crack. Cannabis crack. Yeah, like crack is cannabis is crack, right?
How much you got?
Yeah, and but and they all kind of let it slip, and then he used that term again, and finally, the gal that was providing it was with the dispensary, was explaining cannabis and crack are as far apart as you get. Okay, crack is more like cocaine or meth, right? So anyway, and as things went on, it just changed the whole tone when they started seeing how little they were impaired from consuming the marijuana. It really opened the eyes of officers. And then they had a trainer there, because keep in mind, you had the guy training on how to prove impairment, and he's telling these other officers, he said, now just because he did that does not mean that he's legally impaired. And he's trying to convince these officers, don't go quickly jumping to impairment the first time they trip doing a field sobriety test.
Right.
In fact, this...
and those field sobriety tests are questionable at
They are.
best, because they're made... You could be completely sober and you can't get through it.
When the officer's tag says, "Well, Linda, you know you're in trouble."
The first, this former police chief who now owns a dispensary, he was one of the patients there. Well, due to his health concerns, his leg was shaking. Well, crap, his leg was probably shaking when he went to bed last night, shaking when he woke up this morning. And just because someone's shaking doesn't mean, oh, it's because you consumed an illegal substance and you are now impaired.
Yeah, you ever been pulled over and the cop asks you what are you so nervous for?
I just got pulled over. So,
you're standing here with a gun and might shoot me.
Yeah.
I am literally nervous. Exactly.
So, you've got to...
and you're going to extort a bunch of money for
Oh, well, I don't care about that yet.
Well, yeah, and because it's a drug crime...
Get out of here.
Because it's a drug crime now, all of a sudden asset forfeiture kicks in and you take their car, their money, everything.
Yeah,
well, they'll do that and a felony and this and that. And that's the thing.
That's why they're nervous.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's why, as Nathan was writing about, that the cops and the cannabis people kind of cleared out and waited to see how the cops dealt with things because they didn't want to.
Yeah.
There's a nervous tension there that has been built up through the years, and rightly so.
Mm-hmm. Now, a couple of my friends over there, Chris Moe, who actually lives just outside Muskogee in the county over by Taft, he's got a deep set apprehension because he has been busted.
Yeah.
And he's been a long-term pain management patient. He said it was the best day ever. Norma Sapp, who's been the apostle of, decriminalizing marijuana in Oklahoma.
Really
she said, "This is my best day ever." Right. I mean, it was such a fantastic day because what you saw happening, you can't really point a finger at it, but you could tell attitudes were changing.
Right.
And all of a sudden, when these patients had a chance to educate law enforcement to doing their job better.
Right.
And the cops were very open to them. Right. And so that's why they said, we've got to take this on the road. So I'm going to be following this story. I hope to be telling you about more of these events as we go around the state and do them. So,
and I'm hoping that we as 3D Politics maybe can join in on some of these things. I know I want, as constitutional grounds, I would love to be a part of this and be able to go out and explain to these officers how they need to approach it from a constitutional perspective.
I love that.
And then combine that with look, and because you have what they are required to do and think. They actually don't have the right to assume evil upon the citizenry and assume that because you have some weed in a baggie in your pocket, that makes you a criminal. They do not have that right. They don't have the right to go there as police, but they also need to be shown that there is nothing there to it. Yeah. So both have to happen because right now the police are acting as criminals. Yeah. As we were talking earlier, they need to be treated as the criminals they are, but at the same time they also need to be rehabbed and shown that there's nothing to this, and they've been fed a lie. A bunch of lies. We have to end the piracy that is asset forfeiture.
Oh, yeah.
It is piracy.
We could just do a show on that. Yeah.
And we need to end the political prison, the prisoning of political prisoners, because that's what you have when you see cops arresting people for gun and drug crimes. Okay, unless they're discharging the weapon or waving it around dangerously at other people, you do not have a crime.
Sure.
And so what you have people in prison for this. Right. They are political prisoners for not having submitted to the state and their edicts on what is proper behavior.
First, the Lawton Sedition
Act.
All right. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, man, this was nuts. Good
Last
friend.
week, Pahuska, this week, Lawton.
Tim Harper, He does these First Amendment audits, Second Amendment audits, takes his camera in, walks around police stations and stuff. Tim has got guts, man. And he went down there.
You know what? That shouldn't take guts to walk into our government facility.
Well,
you dreamer.
Okay.
You know, it shouldn't be that bad.
But-
just think about it.
Now, Tim's part of the Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, part of,
Right.
our bunker over in Oklahoma City, and then another Adrian Otap, E Pluribus Otap,
right.
another guy that you'll see on the Oklahoma
He's been on
Taxpayers Unite.
on the-
Yeah. So these two guys went down and joined hundreds of protesters there in Lawton. And I called Adrian tonight. I said, where were the cops? He says, you know what? They camped out about 2 blocks away. And I said, so there was you and Tim and hundreds of these people. And I mean, they were wearing the hoods, the masks and everything, and they were blocking them. Folks, look at it. I just published a story today about noon that there was literally sedition going on. Now, sedition's a heavy word, but this wasn't just a protest. Wasn't even a rebellion, a refusal to do something. This was taking over government entities, our public streets, and shutting them down. And not only that, shutting down access to a federal army facility, Fort Sill. Nobody could get in or out for a while there. And
This is like Hong Kong chaos.
yeah. Now, Tim, you talk about guts. He's got this 10-foot long PVC pipe and a Trump 2020 flag on it.
Oh my.
Big blue flag. And he's holding
There's
that
your
thing up
re-education
and
kid.
walking up in their midst. And you know what? Tim's packing heat and it's out in the open and they know that he's loaded. Tim survived a hostile crowd. Now, this big 400-pound guy or something like that was shoving him and chest bumping him and trying to, coerce and block him. I got a picture on my article there that Channel 25, Fox 25, Oklahoma City did. They finally formed a human chain to keep him out for the protest because he has his flag 10 feet high in the air, or 12 feet high. And, but here's my problem. Where were the cops?
Really? Yep. Oh, were they being paid?
Oh, they were. No, it's
I'm
2
just
blocks
saying,
away.
We pay for them. We pay for them. We pay for them.
No,
and here's
no.
what we expect.
Listen, it's not just the Lawton police here that didn't show up. It's the Comanche County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah.
It's the Oklahoma Highway Patrol.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this, that the military police at the gates backed up way back behind the gates.
We're seeing the same thing happen in Portland. They do the
Yeah.
same thing in Portland.
Right.
They're doing
The-
it.
no, the
Berkeley.
I want to
Yeah.
say this. Our military police did not remove the obstructing masses
Right.
from the gates to enter into Fort
Well,
Sill.
didn't they also block the highway?
Yes, I-44, U.S. Interstate 44.
Right.
And so, now, a month ago, a bunch of protesters went in there that gates. They weren't blocking. They were just there to demonstrate on the boulevard, the grassy knoll, and one military police ordered them off, and the military suspended him and re-educated him for what he did. He's a military, he is commissioned.
He represents the authority.
And he was an officer. Okay, this wasn't a
Well,
listed man.
did he order them off of an area that they could be at?
No, this was a secure military base. You had to check in. You had to have.
They were inside the base.
It's a closed base.
But they were inside the base.
Yes, they
Oh,
were
okay.
inside the base. Okay, so what I'm saying is, there was no law enforcement. There was open sedition, and we had two members of the Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, Tim Harper and Adrian Otap, that were left to fend for themselves. Fortunately, they were both packing heat, and the people knew it. And other than some chest bumping and pushing, that's about all that happened to them. Thank God that's all that happened.
Well, I mean, this is a great example of why we need Second Amendment rights is from these the sedition, acts of sedition, and factions. You
Yeah.
know, they run amok with no respect for the law.
Yeah, and this to me is like, where is our government? we are no better off than the mayor of Baltimore was when the rioting happened there, and she got in front of the cameras and says, let them do what they're going to do. And you know who suffered? It was mostly the black merchants.
Right.
That suffered because they let them be looted because the cops cared more about their own butts than protecting the people they took in office.
The folks in Koreatown, they actually
themselves. No, that was Southside. That was Rodney King back in '91. Yeah, that was a while back.
Wait, what are you talking about?
The Baltimore one.
Oh, Baltimore. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I really have a problem mostly with our State Department of Public Safety. They were nowhere. And it wasn't like this caught them by surprise. No. This thing hit the media 5 days earlier.
Right.
So they knew it was happening.
This proves out the lie. So in the normal, ordinary conversation of Americans, we discuss, socialism versus capitalism, whether we should rely on 911 to save us during an emergency or whether we should be self-reliant and defend ourselves. This is a perfect example of why socialism is a lie. Calling the police doesn't guarantee you can protect yourself.
Yeah.
You won't protect yourself. What's the famous line? When seconds count, the police will be there in minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
And I want to say they continually got heckled.
They can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
It's unfair to ask the cops to do what the liberals ask them to do.
Yeah, that's true. But when you got, they were supposed to be at this event.
That's a different issue.
So what I'm saying here, is these two friends of OTU Media here, part of our journalism crew, if it weren't for them packing heat, and I'm telling you, you can watch the video. It's like an hour and 40 minutes.
They can find that at Student Politics?
We put it on 3D Politics
and
Live
3D
as
Politics.
well.
Nice, okay.
But you'll see them constantly telling them, hey, why are you carrying a gun? Get rid of that gun. Why did they want them to get rid of that gun?
Well, that allowed them to carry the flag. That's why.
Allowed them to 1 minute topics?
Yeah.
Okay. First one, federal sentencing of an embezzler. Let me tell you what happened. A guy just embezzled from his employer this week. He was sentenced this last week. $420,000 he took. And he went to federal court to have it prosecuted. And he's going to be sentenced coming up this fall. The question is, will he get the Brinkley sentencing? Remember, famous state senator Rick Brinkley embezzled from his employer $1.8 million and spent 37 months in jail.
And has had to pay nothing.
And now another fellow recently embezzled or swindled from Arvest Bank through loans and stuff over $5 million. He only over $5 million spent 33 months in jail. Here's where our state law,
have a baggie of weed in your pocket.
Here's our state law says 10 years in jail if it's over $25,000. So my question is, here I'm going to tell you folks what every lawyer knows is worth his salt. If you have your choice of being prosecuted in either state court or federal court, go with federal court. Oklahoma has the highest incarceration rate, right?
We like to throw people in prison.
Are we the
incarceration nation?
Are we the most evil people, the evilest state? No.
That's debatable.
But nonetheless,
Don't keep right over here.
Nonetheless, we have bankrupted our state. If you've been following the legislature the last 5 years, you'll find out just how we've been groveling for money every which way.
Sure.
To prop up this high incarceration rate.
Right.
So I'm not so much criticizing, did Brinkley get a special deal? Evidently, it's pretty much what the federal government does. Brinkley didn't really get that good of a deal compared to other federal defendants.
It didn't get the Epstein deal.
No, but what I'm
Epstein
saying
tried to suicide himself.
what I'm saying is, it illustrates how much stiffer Oklahoma law is and has been for the last 20 years.
Right.
When we elected an FBI agent, former prosecutor, Frank Keating, and he wanted to get tough on crime. These things happen, and then we also said you got to serve 85% of your sentence.
We don't like horse thieves here. It's a big problem.
85% of your sentence before you can even be considered for parole. And we have the 3 strikes law. That means second time you get thrown in for that, it's double. Third time in, it's double. So I'm telling you, this illustrates the problem, and I think I went over a minute on that.
No, that's fine. That's good. That leads us, speaking of military-industrial complex, how it, for a man who has the ability to skirt the law, have sex on a regular basis with 14-year-old little girls. He's got 12 point whatever billion dollars, and that's with a B. And then he winds up in a jail cell, and he's unable to make it out of there alive. I don't see it.
Yeah. Well,
I think he's alive. That's my point.
Well, the Epstein case is really interesting, and here's the big thing. Is you are not alone in your questioning the official narrative. And
no.
I think the big takeaway isn't whether or not he's alive, whether or not how he died, if he did, and all of these things, but rather the fact that people who are knee-jerk acceptors of the official narrative now, finally, have to question it. And it doesn't matter which way they might lean. I can't say what happened because, you can't trust.
Okay, well, let's talk about the report that came out the day before. You had former New Mexico Governor Richardson is being figured as involved in this.
That he went to the island.
Prince Andrew. And we know from, various media reports, Clinton, 20-some times?
27
he
times.
He flew on Epstein's plane, where the hot honeys are. And, it's because the food was so good, right?
Just saying. We just earlier talked about the reality of mankind and the nature of man. People with $12 billion in connections don't just wind up dead. That's not how it works.
Yeah. Well, and and conveniently, like in so many things, the video is missing. He got taken off of suicide watch when he was supposedly completely suicidal. And somehow then he also managed to get the implements to do himself in. So we have all sorts of things that have yet to be answered, and I've seen pictures going around saying it wasn't him and everything else. The one with the nose, his picture turned on its side.
One of these.
And I'm telling you, it just reminds me of a scene from The Godfather and Vito Corleone in the hospital, and all of a sudden it's a ghost town, nobody's around, and then the hitmen show up, It just, this is New York City, life in the boroughs, right?
The reality is it's a world ruled by force. This is one of the problems with the non-aggression type pacts where we pretend if we ignore the potential for violence that it'll just not get to us. Even if you could create a world with a magic wand where there was no violence, the first guy that started knocking stuff over, you can't just not aggress.
Yeah. Now, in the Mueller testimony, it was 2 weeks ago in the House, we found out that Mueller didn't hardly know what was going on in that.
Oh, yeah.
It was the 25 Democrat FBI agents that were all in there that did everything, and Mueller hardly knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And they were all very tight and close with the Clintons, right?
Right.
And you notice how they always, when they had charges against somebody close to Trump in his campaign, they deferred those charges to the New York City FBI.
State, okay.
Yeah, no, it's federal, yes. So the FBI in New York City, everything gets done over there because these guys want it done in New York City. They're in Washington, D.C., but let's do it all in New York. And so then they go to the...
Well, that's also where they had the evidence because that's where he was his office was.
Yeah, that's a valid point. But I would just as soon see Epstein. And again, when it's federal court, they can move that anywhere in the country they want.
Oh, sure.
You know, and so on any of them. And I would much rather have seen Epstein in Omaha at a federal facility.
Well,
you know, because it just, I'm sorry. Am I cynical? Absolutely. I'm cynical.
The real thing is, again, what was he up for? What were the charges against him? And again, we come back to they were going to be the trafficking and the being with the underage girls. Mm-hmm. None of which are federal crimes. Those need to be prosecuted by the local state.
Oh, David, you are getting enemies now.
Well, the thing is that's the entirety. Show me if somebody's gonna start ragging on me about that. Show me in the Constitution where the federal government has the right to prosecute.
But it's wrong,
for
David.
Crimes.
It's okay because that's such a heinous crime. It's okay. It doesn't matter who prosecutes because it's wrong.
And we have two sovereigns at least.
100 people surveyed show me overreach. What else we
it
got?
was like, you know, when I get in trouble in school in second grade, and and my goodness, you know, the teacher's, you know, really tough on me, and I'm just bawling, and she's, why wasn't that rough on you? I said, I gotta go home. My parents are gonna know.
I got a death march coming, lady.
Yeah, exactly. You talk about double jeopardy. Oh man, every kid knows what double jeopardy is. So, but anyways, I'm just saying, if we try to split up humanity into subsets as though they're different species, because that's what the woman in Michigan's trying to do. Mm-hmm. You know? Now, I understand when you put a donkey with a horse, you get a mule, and that mule is neutered, right? But nature itself tells us there is nothing in nature that keeps any human from any other human.
Exactly. Well, except for physical barriers.
I'm going to say this. Okay,
technology.
This is my shock jock in me. I'm going to say this. My kids asked me, he said, you know, Dad, because I'm trying to teach them the Bible, I'm trying to teach them morality and stuff, and they said, Dad, is mixed nationality marriage, mixed racial marriage, is it wrong? And I said, yes, it is wrong. I said, the scriptures call us as Christians a set-aside people, a holy nation, a peculiar people. For a Christian to marry a non-Christian would be a mixed marriage. And I said, if you are a believer, you are commanded in your faith, your creed, to marry your like kind, another Christian. So,
that is a good deal.
Now that you've taken your jaw off the ground,
David Stern, you've taken us from race to a belief system, which is, you know,
I am, but
you're not born into a belief system.
What's interesting is that we got there, but this Jean Kramer brought up the Bible. She thinks that the Bible teaches that you're not to marry outside of your racial kind. Yeah. And she said Adam and Eve were the same. She forgot about Moses and the Ethiopian and others and Solomon and his wives from around
that
the
took
world.
him away from God.
But
yes, he was monogamous with every one of those wives.
But my point
is actually that's another concept for another day.
But my point is, when we're discrediting Mrs. Kramer here, we also have to understand that there are people who have deeply held convictions that are not hate-based. They're not ignorance-based. They are faith-based.
Sure.
You know? And they have every right to practice their faith as it pertains to their life.
And as so long as that they are not violating the rights of others in the practice of it.
The just laws are deprived from the government's duty to protect us from the injuries of others. That's Jefferson, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's an amazing thing because it's so disingenuous, like most of the things the left does. They're just for political power. Pushing this whole diversity thing. Well, biodiversity is a thing that naturally exists in equilibrium. You know, we don't need the left, just like we don't need people curating the Amazon. It's going to get along with or without you.
Or
we need people curating diversity.
Right.
You know, it's up to you in your own prerogative whether you want to have mixed race society or not, or mixed race company or not. I mean, that's totally up to the individual, and it's ridiculous, I think, for people to really try to curate that and play I guess farm master or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've got
I saw that movie.
My youngest brother is openly homosexual, and he married another man according to what they call Minnesota marriage. It's a covenant. I did not honor it as a marriage from my faith perspective, because my faith informs me what marriage is as a sacrament. But I do honor it as a covenant. Now, why do I do that? Because if you look in the Bible, Jonathan and David were two very close people who entered into a covenant. No, I'm not saying they were gay.
Yeah, no way.
But they had a right. Yeah, they both had wives, right?
No way.
Cover.
But
Like,
they,
it gets you out of it.
but here's the thing. We're talking human rights here. A human has an opportunity and a right to enter into whatever covenants they want.
Of course.
Okay? And that's between them.
Sure.
Just as, now, after Jonathan died, it was many years later, David, all of a sudden, it was brought to his attention, Jonathan had a descendant named Mephibosheth. And
Took care of that
Mephibosheth, he had him come live in the palace and eat with him and everything. He still honored that covenant to the generations that followed.
Right.
So that tells me I have to honor covenants just as a right of man. Okay?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I have to honor it as a sacrament. And that's why I believe we should get government out of the whole
business.
thing. To call them covenants, whatever you want, because covenant's already a legal term.
Yeah.
And just give that term marriage back to the churches and the faiths and the synagogues.
Marriage predates government, and
Yeah.
it is a religious issue.
Another
not a
plug.
government issue.
Todd Russ, the Marriage Freedom Bill, next session legislature, pass that thing out of committee. Yeah, that restores it. It makes it to where a couple can just go file their marriage with their affidavit at the court clerk's office. You don't even need an officiant for it. It's a right of man.
We all fall short of the glory of God. If homosexuality is a sin, so is gluttony, so is adultery, so is lying. Everybody falls somewhere on the spectrum of imperfection.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to disallow other sinners from going to church or enjoying their freedom simply because they're also a
But
sinner.
you know what? It's so much funner to judge you than to judge myself.
So much easier to judge me.
Something about specs and poles.
I know.
Is this also racial?
Well, I want to judge your actions, but I want to judge my intentions.
That sounds only fair.
So, anyway.
Anything else to close out, guys? What else you got? Anything?
No.
I think that's it. I'm Tom
What do we got
McKay.
coming up? Labor Day? Is
Labor
it
Day
time
weekend.
to honor what work has done for our society?
Tommy.
Thank your parents for teaching you a good work ethic. Teach your kids a good work ethic. Be safe this weekend.
Thank a comrade.
Tom McKay here with all three Davids. David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. We'll see you again next week.
Good night.
So,
If you're just joining us, I'm Tom McKay here with 3D Politics, 3Ds, all the favorite Davids in here in Oklahoma. David Oldham, David Van, David D'Ambroso, and of course, the exciting news of the day. We're talking about healthcare because we're talking about vaccines. So tell us about the McHealthcare data scam.
I love this. Now, because I have no life, I watch interim studies on YouTube. It comes up the next day. The house. Okay. Last year they had this first ever bicameral interim study on medical marijuana laws. We called it the Joint Committee. And anyway, so Greg McCourtney, senator from down in Ada, he loved doing that. He's in healthcare as business as well. So
Really?
as a provider, yeah, I think nursing.
Did you know
homes-
that Oklahoma Constitution forbids him from voting on things that would affect him?
Ah, there you go.
Conflict of interest.
So here's the deal.
Sessions.
So here's what they did. The first day of this interim study was him and Marcus McIntyre, who's an insurance expert now because he just bought an insurance agency a year or two ago.
Expert.
Now he's an expert. Yes, and he now just got a license though to sell not health insurance. But anyway,
But he's got a license.
so they're trying to push this Medicaid expansion, but they don't really want to tell us that. So they're doing this big study every week. Yeah, a new bunch come in with their slideshows.
Turns out free money's
presentation.
good.
Week number
money's
one,
good.
let's bring in the Department of Health to talk about this East Coast study called Your Health Grade, or Your Health Ranking, that's what it was.
Okay.
And they decided that Oklahoma, this is East Coast liberals, decided Oklahoma is number 49 out of 50.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad.
We match our education
we are
system.
not like Connecticut, folks, and we need to be because they told us to. The folks in Connecticut told us to. Well, anyway, so
We're not as happy as Scandinavians who have some of the highest rates of depression and suicide in the world. But the highest
So
standard
get
of living.
this. So get this. They said Oklahoma has the second worst rate, not for health care access, but for health insurance policies. Because they're the same, right? You can't get health care unless you have
An
a
insurance policy.
smorgasbord policy, and all you can
This
eat
is so
Blue Cross,
classic
big
of
deal.
the,
Right.
the authoritarians
So-
on the left. There's only one thing that we have to do, but there's only one way we can do it.
Yeah. Now,
And that's through health insurance.
so
in their view.
I want to put a plug in. Senator Kim David out there, Wagner County, she nailed this one. They were looking at a chart, a map of, shaded by counties, which counties have the worst numbers for non-coverage of a health insurance policy. Now,
Cherokee was probably the worst.
Cherokee, Bryan County, okay, all of the ones that
Creek
just so
County.
happen to have the highest number of the
Indian tribes.
Indian tribes. Now, let's go back to Obamacare. When they set it up, they said, okay, if you're covered by the Indian Health Services, you're not going to face a penalty for not going out and buying another policy. Because that treaty right and those benefits there, we're going to call that you have access to health care. Now, I know a lot of
they
people
do.
do. Well, listen,
We're going to call it that.
okay.
Just
I'm telling you, it's probably a little worse than the VA in the minds of people who actually have to use those
But
services.
just imagine if the whole nation had the VA health care
Yeah.
system.
So get this. So Obama said, no, you've got health care, okay? You've got something provided for you. You're not going to face a penalty for not going out and buying another one.
Right.
So we looked it up, and Kim David said, now, why is it that all these places where we have our highest number of tribal members has the lowest coverage in your map when they've got not only the federal health care services, but the Chickasha, the Cherokees, the Choctaws, they put in big time health facilities that locally, statewide, just within their tribe. They're paying out big bucks to provide this to people. And you go back, they said, we used the 2010 census to determine this. So this is before Obamacare was even put in place. And they said, and they quoted, actually, it was the Henry J. Kaiser Foundation,
Right.
which is a think tank that focuses on healthcare policy.
Right.
And they said, for purposes of the study, those who get their health services through Indian Health Services, we are treating them as uninsured. So some liberal think tank said, no, they're not insured.
They already have-
Therefore, our state health department gave this testimony. They were the only testifier at the week number one. They were the blue chip headliner, marquee, this is it. And they're telling us how horrible we are. And so, I saw this, and they said, well, we don't know. We'll get back to you, Senator David. So I looked it up, as I told you, and then I reached out to my friends at OCPA. And I showed them this, and some of their other people have been part of OCPA board for a while. They said, man, that looks like, press release material. And so eventually now, this last week, OCPA wrote an article based on my research. And they took it even further, and they followed up with Kim David. Did you get an answer? It's 2 weeks gone by. Did you get an answer? No. They're not getting back to us.
Hold your breath.
Why? Because they're lying and they got caught lying. McHealthcare interim study is a sham. Either they have got to come clean, McCourtney, McIntyre, come clean, tell us where we are getting wrong information, because if you won't, we don't know what else you won't tell us the truth
Well,
about.
David, what do they have to gain from lying to us? Why are you so cynical and distrusting of these nice people that are just trying to help
You know
everyone
what?
out?
Everybody at the Capitol has an agenda, and you got to figure out what that agenda is. And sometimes it's getting somebody else's rights, somebody else's freebies, I should put it that way, at the expense of your rights, the expense of your freedom, your tax dollars. And they're trying to institute something that we'll never get free of.
Converting your rights into bucks.
Yeah,
It is. It's a statistical shell game to where they always say they never cover 100%, they always cover about 85%,
Right.
because when you get to the front of the line, they go, oh, you're in the 15%.
Yeah.
Right.
The problem is, the reason why when Trump got elected and we had Republican House, Republican Senate, they still couldn't get rid of it, is because so many of their states had gotten so dependent on this government program that weaning them off of it proved to be something they didn't have the guts to do.
Right.
And this is a problem. There are 14 states now that have said, no, we're not going to do it. Oklahoma's one of them. And now we got McIntyre and McCourtney as Republicans.
Who
trying
it
to
sounds
push-
like both have ulterior motives from their own personal businesses.
Even if they don't, they're literally violating the law of non-contradiction. They're calling something that is insured not insured. That's where the whole problem starts.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, but they're violating the law, the Constitution,
Via calling a word what it is not. That is the functional way of breaking the law.
That's their lie.
Okay,
Yeah.
now, hear me out, because a whole bunch of people on OCPA had a fit when I said this. Healthcare is a right, okay?
Yes.
You
have the right to care for your health.
That's right. And if somebody says, no, you can't, the only means by which they can is through due process of law. You've been sentenced to death. They won't let you save your life because they are trying to kill you, okay?
Correct.
Okay, so you have a right as a part of what is the right of self-defense, natural right,
Well,
right
among
to
others,
right to
plenty.
life, right?
Sure.
That's in our Declaration of Independence, and that. So you do have those rights, the right to health care. I don't mean it the way Bernie and the rest of the libs have, the leftists have bastardized it to mean a free giveaway.
You're actually talking about what the word means according to the definition of the words,
Yeah.
not saying something is non.
Well, everything that Democrats like is a human right. And everything they don't like is evil and must be banned.
Okay, and now,
Well, that's true,
now
too.
insurance. D'Ambroso, I know you're in the insurance industry, so I may
Buy your insurance.
we may have a falling out on this, but buying insurance is not getting health care.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay,
Dang,
it's
you folded so quickly.
okay.
It's true.
What we need is health care, not health insurance.
It goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, Democrats are so unimaginative and so infantile. They come up with a solution for a problem, and it's the first thing they haven't really thought through. And so they do this infinite conflation thing where health insurance is health care. It is not.
Yes.
I used to ask my kids during the whole healthcare debate before going to school in the morning, I said, do you kids want ride to school insurance or do you want to ride to school?
So anyway, I don't know where this is going. I'm hoping, I've been working with some of the people, Caitlin Fraley over there at OCPA.
Oh,
She's
OCPA,
the point person on this. And, let's just see what we can do. I don't know what's going to happen. You've heard Kevin Hearn, our congressman, saying, man, this thing ends up on the ballot. Right now it's looking like it would pass.
Well, we talked earlier. Remember, this is one of these things that can't get to the ballot lawfully. Because again, the money has to be coerced from us. And
When you say coerced dollars, really that's moral dollars. Collective bucks are the most moral and efficient bucks there are.
Well, the whole point is that we don't have property rights if they can just dictate another scheme, whatever it is. Yeah. And it doesn't, and it's just a giant slippery slope. It never has been allowed. It's never been lawful. Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, they're illegal federal programs on the one hand because they violate the 10th Amendment. They violate the separation of powers. But then they also violate our property rights. So they are a 4th and 5th Amendment violation as well. And so the thing is that there are so many different ways of looking at the issue. And we need to start getting back to our locals. Because just like our city officials will violate our rights one way or another, so will our state officials. And all politics is local. So it comes back to, what are you doing?
Not my officials, Oldham. Maybe their officials or your officials, but not my officials.
Well, okay, somebody's official.
That's kind of amazing when they ask the public what they think about Congress's performance. It's always like really low, like single digit, like 8% approval. But when you ask them about their congressman or woman, well, it's like 40, 50, 60%.
Right.
And the social credit score.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Your social credit score is declining right now by watching this program.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah,
It'll never quite be as far down as ours because we're hosting it.
Okay, can you describe what it is?
No matter how much cannabis you smoke. Yeah, every time you smoke it.
How nice are you
on
when you smoke? Is that what it is?
Well, I mean, China's already implemented it, and they're bragging about how many tens of thousands of people in China that they've deprived of transportation rights because they have a low social credit score. But essentially, the massive surveillance state that's been implemented the last several decades, mostly in developed nations, less so in the United States than in Western Europe and in China, but we still have a lot of it here. The way it would work here, as suggested, would be the metadata would be observed from your social media interactions, from Amazon, from your purchases at the supermarket, and they'd use these data points to figure out if you're a little bit too sad to have so many bullets. And, although the Trump administration reportedly is discussing right now internally in talks with legislators about how to implement a social credit score here in the United States to determine who is fit for whatever, including gun ownership. Yeah. Well, and it's reported, so who knows? Could be the media. Trump does these, he fakes left. And everybody throws a hysterical fit, especially libertarians. I love doing that. Hi, libertarians. I know you guys love us. A lot of our guys do it, too. And they're like, oh, my gosh, President Trump said that he would discuss this. How dare he? He's a criminal. And then what he really does is, when the leftists don't want to have any kind of reasonable discussion, he says, well, I tried to do their scheme, but I guess they didn't want it. And he ends up winning. But this could be one of those. He did it with red flag laws. They're totally off the table. Everyone went hysterical about that. I said, guys, just take a breath. Politics isn't a day-by-day game. It's a yearly thing. It's really over the decades how the left has won over the last 120 years. But I digress. The point is, it is being discussed. We can never just rest on our laurels. The danger, too, is on both sides. The danger is an overreaction and saying Trump bad, because he's discussing this. On the other side, the overreaction could be more dangerous. Trump is good, and he has our back forever and ever, and, he can never do wrong.
And then we get complacency.
We can't be complacent. We have to stand on it.
Let's talk about the private sector rollout of this social score. Take Alex Jones with InfoWars, for example.
Who?
Alex Jones.
What?
Take Alex Jones, please.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So, it's okay if you cuss his name, right?
My score is going up.
Yeah. So, but
he is crazy.
Within a matter of hours or minutes, Apple took him off of iTunes, the podcasting, whole data. Twitter knocked him off. Actually, Twitter was a little bit delayed. Facebook took him off, YouTube and all of the Google tools, all that, I mean, they killed his whole library. They
got unsubscribed from his YouTube channel if you were subscribed.
Yeah, my leftist friends used to be the ones decrying censorship and book burning, but somehow they think it's okay when it's Alex Jones.
Good to Bill Maher. Bill Maher's entire audience booed him when he said, hey, you shouldn't be banning speech.
Yeah.
And everybody applauded the total evisceration of free expression. And he stood alone. So good on you, Bill Maher.
Yeah, right. Well, and
He's the only liberal right now.
I'm facing with senior
his side.
politics. I'm just trying to be that platform that I wish Facebook actually was.
No,
and I'm
David,
getting
when
all
people,
kinds of
when
heat.
people have a wrong opinion, you cannot entertain that wrong opinion.
Well,
and as long as you know in your heart of hearts that your opinion is correct, you can suppress everyone else's opinion. As long as you know that you're the good guy. And
Right.
the other guy's the bad guy. That's what you have to do.
Actually, even though there's some sarcasm there, it's got a thread of truth, because that's why what you just said in your sarcasm line, that's why in today's public we acknowledge a greatness if you have a lack of confidence. That is, if you say something with a feeling of confidence, we don't like that. Because it's as though
That's arrogant.
you know what you're talking about.
Well, it's
And
arrogant
we
if
like
you're
it
on
if
the other
you-
side.
we
If
like
it's
it
on
if
your
you
side,
say-
you love it.
If you're uncertain about what you say, we like that.
Curated and acceptable opinions. It's called PC. But we've got this PC organization, like one that has never existed before. Now they've become part of corporate structures.
Yeah.
And even liberals are falling into the net like, oh, you said that word 15 years ago, well, you're fired. And you're like, well, I belong to that ethnic group. And like, no.
Yeah,
So
I had to tell some liberal on Facebook the other day. He was making a point that he's anti-rapist, which I don't realize how you get out of your equation. But I said, hey, buddy, I think your right blinker is out, but your virtue signal is lighting up the sky.
So he's anti-democrat, is that?
Yeah, I guess something.
right.
Anti-plunder.
And, no, and if you say anything that shows any leniency towards rape, why then you're out of here. Unless you're a rap singer, then you are hip and cool. And you are suppressed, and we cannot. Yeah. So
That's one reason we elected Trump, because we needed to smash PC culture, because it is suffocating us. I mean, it's everywhere, and it's worked its way, and it's been here for a long time, but it's bigger than it's ever been in public school and all of our institutions, in academia and government. And it's just, you can't say anything. You have an approved set of ideals, and if you deviate from that at all, you are a pariah in your experience
then
now.
here's the-
And it's on both sides, whether
So-
you're a conservative or a liberal.
Exactly, and that's I wanted to make sure that got pointed
It's
out.
wrong no matter who you are.
The question is then, how do you solve it? What's the solution?
More speech. You don't bow down.
Yeah.
They're demanding that you kneel. Do not kneel before Zod.
okay, I'll tell you what
It's
the
like a muscle. If you don't use it, it'll atrophy.
what the government feels is the best solution right now. 48 states attorneys general, decided they're going to sue Facebook and Google both. I think they're going after
I think
both.
it's all 50 now.
And that's going to be the way we fix it. But I don't think so.
Well,
Because how do you?
it's a ploy, but I see this all the time. Whenever we're wielding government, I'm saying like-minded people that just want to leave others alone and want to live according to the Constitution. When we take on someone, we tend to be nice guys and give them all the benefits of the doubt and not be cutthroat. When the left has an inquiry, it looks a lot like this Trump-Russia thing, where they're going back into your, to see if you jaywalked 22 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, it's
And you're
always
gonna get,
progressive
and you're
and
going to get prison
caustic.
time for
Yeah.
it.
Well, when
And our guys, I don't feel that they're going to, I guess the Attorney General Barr says that it's going to be this wide-spanning inquiry, but I really doubt it's going to move outside of the scope of trust. He says that it could and it will, because if it doesn't move out of the scope of these potential trust violations, they're not going to look at this censorship or this platform or
that's a federal thing, but at the same time, several states are joining together using the vehicle of state law and state authorities
to address the trust or the platforms.
to go. It's more than a
Publisher.
monopoly accusation.
See, that's what I'm worried about because, okay, great, but I'm sorry, I don't care. I don't care if you split Google up into 4 entities that censor me just as much. I don't really care.
Well, if you replace a too powerful company with a more powerful government, where did liberty go? You got nothing. It's
Look,
probably
I just want
worse.
government to either make them bake the cake, either you have to provide services to everyone, apply that standard you apply to gay cakes to everyone. They have to take my money, which they will not.
Right.
Facebook will not take my money, and
I
they
just
lie
talked
about
about
it.
today.
So for me to promote my content, to spend my $1 or sometimes $50, to spend large amounts of money or small amounts of money to get my message out there.
So it's not all about the money.
So
is
they
it?
won't take it
Right.
because they don't like the content of it.
Right.
They disagree with
That's
me.
a good point. This is the same thing
So
that was happening with the IRS slow walking all of these Tea Party groups. And that
Oh, but it wasn't
all
all Tea Party. It was only 98%
And
Tea Party.
even down to
So-
the individual. Even down
Right,
to the individual.
and so you
Lois
know,
Lerner admitted she wasn't good at math.
somehow I got approved to
Had the
spend
IRS.
money on my Facebook page beforehand and stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah,
how can you be
otherwise-
offensive? You prove that you have a high enough social credit score. I mean, all this stuff is tied together.
Who'd have thought I'd have the highest credit score here?
You were pretty straight laced.
No. There's other people that say different, but you know,
And they're probably on the right.
It's going down steadily.
yeah.
One of the other things that the mayor is doing recently, he was trying to promote the 918, and you know, I gotta say, think the mayor should be ashamed.
Are we gonna shame the mayor? Yeah, let's do it.
Wait,
I
you
think
just start
the
calling
mayor's-
him GT
I
Barnum.
decided
He's
since
running a circus.
Love it.
He's a clown.
I thought-
T.T. Barnum.
Just call him Barnum.
So here's the deal: as a newly appointed reverend of the 3D Politics Church of 3D Politics,
2D today, yes.
here's the deal: you should not be a role model for the children to suggest to go get a tattoo. Actually, tattooing is one of the ways you can become HIV positive. And you can't become HIV positive by swimming in rainwater.
Are you HIV positive about that, Tom?
I'm HIV 100% sure. So the point is, getting a tattoo is not something that an elected official should be suggesting to the children. A role model of the city shouldn't be suggesting to the children to get a tattoo. It's just bad form.
And I don't ever want to hear or see G.T. Bynum riding a line scooter without a helmet on.
Well, I gotta play
Shame
devil's
on
advocate
you.
here, Tom.
Shame on
Shame! Yeah, shame!
Isn't it true that you're just an angry old man yelling at the sky about this?
Me? Yes.
Tattoos are just the new norm.
Well, yeah, that's right. Plus, the other thing is, can you be genuine and really get one? From what I hear, it washes off.
You need a tattoo because now everyone has one, and if you're the real rebel, you don't have one. Because not having a tattoo is the new having a tattoo, since 97% of the population has a tattoo.
You know, I gotta say something. The other night, this a few weeks ago, I missed the Republican Executive Committee meeting because my wife was stalled out in North Tulsa with a flat tire.
No.
Well, that, you know, I had to.
Should have ridden the bus, maybe.
She was picking up my daughter from the airport, and there they were, stranded in North Tulsa because, you know, we've got detours. You can't get out of the airport without going through South Sheridan. So the next day, I go to get some tires. I go out there to Tulsa Hills and Discount Tires. They're hot as can be out there, and 5 of their employees are wearing long sleeve black shirts, long pants, and the rest, you know, several others just wearing shorts, just the
Let's see where
minimum.
this is going.
Hot as can be. And I step out there by the garage, you know, and the guy's talking to me. I said, "Why are they wearing long sleeves?" And they said, "Well, it's for protection." I said, "Then why aren't you protecting yourself?" He says, "Okay, I'll tell you the real reason."
Well, that's
He says, "We have a policy. You can't have any exposed tattoos working here." They're miserable. To keep their job, they've got to cook in the heat now because they decided they had to get that tattoo, and they weren't thinking about their
Why do you
career
think I'm always
prospects.
wearing this blazer? You know? You can't see my sleeves.
Well,
Unprofessional.
I just figure that's why you're self-employed.
I had no idea.
Face
It's some
tattoos.
street cred. I didn't know it.
One day, people will look at me as odd because I'm not wearing the tattoo.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no piercings.
I'm actually a white guy wearing permanent Trudeau face.
There you
so,
go. Ah.
yeah. But, the little small head.
We've got about 3 or 4 more stories to go before the evening is over here with 3D Politics. I'm Tom McKay, your host. We've got David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso here talking all things politics here in Oklahoma. We're going to move on to, do you want to do the theological stuff or constitutional carry?
The theological.
Yeah, all of these are
Well,
more
it's
fun.
basically, we've got this list of 11 pedophile priests
Oh yeah,
And when they're in
let's talk about
trouble,
that
even
stuff.
Just 11, Tom?
Well, 8 of them are dead, so it's time to get them in trouble. It's not like they can get out of it. Life is eternal.
For those who don't know, this past week, the Diocese of Tulsa, or in Tulsa, or wherever
In
it is,
eastern Oklahoma.
Eastern Oklahoma, came out and declared that they were, I think, airing some dirty laundry.
It's an admission.
and making an admission.
Confession
and-
is good for the soul.
And it's, it's confession. It's got to happen sometime, and 30 or 40 years late is better than never, right?
Yeah.
But apparently, they have known about these pedophile priests, and they announced that they announced 11 of them. But we know that 8 are dead, no longer on the earth, and the other 3 are not to be found, and the church is not letting anybody know where they are, or even who they are.
Well, they said no longer serving in the priesthood is, I think.
Oh.
Is that what
Yeah,
they
might
said?
be
I thought it was
bishops.
just not in the diocese.
So maybe they're bishops now, or
Right.
the Pope?
Oh,
But,
Yeah.
and let's also say this, their term was, there is credibility to the accusations against him. I don't want us to
All
get
11?
sued for...
Well, no, that's
yeah.
a good point.
Yeah.
The question is, how long have these credible accusations been held onto and been suppressed?
Yeah, and,
centuries. Is
and
forever.
there are priests currently under investigation and suspended from the priesthood in this diocese currently who weren't on that list, that served right here in Tulsa in the last few years. So it's bigger than that list.
What were these kids wearing?
I know. Did they ask for it, Tom?
They were wearing MAGA hats.
Just
They deserved it
trying
according to
to
the
break a
left.
little tension.
Little tension, folks.
Yeah, there, it broke the surface tension then.
All right.
So anyway, that happened this week. Folks, check them out. All of the news agencies had it on their services.
No.
You can check out.
Yeah, and let's say, good for you, Roman Catholic leadership. That whether you should have done it 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you did it, and that's a good thing. Now let's keep going.
Right, 11 down, thousands to go.
I mean, listen, I've known a lot of great priests and nuns, okay? There are, one of my favorite teachers as a child, Sister Sienna. And she was fantastic and devoted and lived a life with a vow of poverty and total service. And I commend that, just like my 2 aunts who served their whole lives as nuns.
I have great respect, the greatest respect, actually, theologically, for my favorite Catholic, Martin Luther.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no
Who
kidding.
they pretty much made a saint now after they excommunicated him.
Well, they were going to do all that stuff he suggested anyway. I mean,
But no,
that's what they said.
when a good thing's being done, you got to commend the good thing, right? And so, yeah.
Yeah, well.
Revealing the list. No, but revealing that list, it's you're not going to get closure without bringing it. And I know
it's better than doing nothing.
We can hope. Well, you can also be very, very sly and deceptive about doing it, and that's worse.
Yeah.
Than
Look how cynical you're. We're asking for a little faith.
There
There
had to be 1,500 years of good works by the Catholic Church before Martin Luther could come along and balance it out. Okay. So I mean, he could have done anything
so you
without
know, Martin Luther.
So the point is, he furthered, like you said, he was a Catholic. He furthered the Catholic.
Actually, do you know what Martin Luther's complaint was?
Well, there are about 88 of them.
The wafers were
no, actually they weren't.
40 theses.
They were not Catholic enough.
Yeah.
The Pope was a heretic and not Catholic enough. That it was his
we are
crime
not
against the
gonna
Catholic
He's
Church.
a super Catholic.
Right.
But
let me say this. if the Methodist Church had been around 2,000 years, they'd have a much longer list of scandals. And I'm just going to say, this happens with all denominations.
That's fair.
Well, especially when they force their men to be asexual.
No,
and that's just
do you know? And it was actually my younger brother who studied for the Catholic priesthood told me it's only been in the last about 600 years that they've required celibacy.
Really?
Yeah, and so they've been, they're an evolving church, and truth sometimes gets evolved with it too, you know.
It just really galls me what they did to the Bible in the 3rd century and just adding all this stuff in there that was never in there before, the practice.
Yeah, and again, you're free to have your views on that, just
Of
like
course.
they're on theirs.
But when 600 years of celibacy?
But
that's a long time to be celibate.
Long time.
That's a theological point, but on the logical point that you brought up, the long history, maybe it's a good record. We just don't have anything to rival
you
it.
know, there are good and bad things, like in any group of people trying to find truth and live by it. You know, I spent my first 18 years as a Roman Catholic. You know, and for me,
I think my whole family's Catholic.
That pilgrimage that each of us really individually have to go on. It has to be individual.
Right.
You have to decide and go that.
And
you
it
know,
starts with having your own Bible and your own language to read.
And
That's
so,
where it begins.
but I just really want to say, we've seen a lot of exploitation in the name of God by religious
Happens
people.
in every group.
I have often said this.
Sure.
The scripture where it says, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain," he wasn't talking about vulgar speech there. He was talking about saying, "Thus saith the Lord," when the Lord hasn't spoken.
Right.
And I contend that more likely happens behind the pulpit than those who sit in the pews.
Yeah.
No.
I think that's statistically sound assumption. I think that's
So,
very good.
anyway, there's our theology section.
We are
Tom.
way off
Wow.
into the theology.
And if you'd like to go into 3D
news.
politics, so let us know what you think.
I'm Tom E. McKay, your host for 3D Politics. I got David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso right here every Monday. Be sure and tune in again for all our live episodes starting again next week. Signing off now. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
And remember,
Bye,
Jesus
everybody.
Christ
Don't
is
move.
the
Don't
reason
move.
for every season.
Okay.
Hold on. Would you say that again?
Jesus Christ is the reason for every season.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Keep Christ in Festivus, folks.
Everybody's trying to get in the last word.